I was 24 when I moved to Seattle for a job. It wasn't a dream job or anything, but it paid okay and I was eager to get out of my hometown. I found this small studio apartment on the north side near the University District. It was affordable and surprisingly cozy with just enough space for a bed, a small couch, and a kitchenette. But there was one strange thing about it. Right above my bed, there was a square ceiling vent, not like a normal air vent. It was big, like a crawl space access panel. At the time, I didn't think much of it. Old buildings always have quirks. The first few nights went by quietly, but maybe a week in, I started noticing faint noises late at night. At first, it was just the kind of creaks and thuds you expect in an old building. But after a while, I realized the sounds were coming from directly above me from the attic space. It wasn't just the sounds. One night, I could swear I heard a soft scraping, like someone dragging their hand across the inside of the vent. I sat up, heart racing, and just stared at the ceiling. Nothing happened for the rest of the night, and I convinced myself I was being paranoid. But things escalated quickly. The next week, I came home from work and immediately felt that something was off. My lamp was off, even though I always left it on a timer. A mug I'd left in the sink was on the counter. And worst of all, I noticed small bits of insulation on the floor beneath the vent. I asked the landlord if anyone had been inside to check the attic, but she said no. She seemed genuinely confused. That night, I barely slept. I kept waking up at every creak, every gust of wind. Then came the straw. One night around 3 a.m., I was lying in bed, eyes wide open, just listening. I had turned off everything, no fan, no sound, just dead silence. That's when I saw it, a small, thin object poking through the edge of the vent. At first, I thought it was a spider leg or something. But as I squinted, I realized it was a straw, a drinking straw. Someone had pushed it through the ceiling to look at me, like a DIY periscope. I didn't scream. I couldn't. I slowly reached for my phone and started recording. But as I hit record, the straw vanished. That morning, I called maintenance and said there was a water leak. When they opened the attic panel from the hallway, what they found still gives me chills. There was a sleeping bag, empty food containers, and a backpack filled with clothes, a flashlight, rope, and a notepad. The notepad had pages of notes written in shaky handwriting. He leaves at 8:05, eats pasta 3 times a week, snores lightly, turns left at 10 a.m. Someone had been living above me, watching me, every single night. Turns out, it was a former tenant. He had been evicted months ago, but had made a copy of the building's master key and returned through the emergency stairwell. He chose the attic of my unit because it had direct access through the vent panel. Police said he was watching multiple tenants rotating between attics. He hadn't harmed anyone yet. But they found more disturbing entries in his notepad. Things like,
"I want to try it tonight."
They never clarified what it meant. I moved out that week. Now, no matter where I live, the first thing I do is check every attic, every vent, every hidden space. I don't sleep without locking my bedroom door even in apartments. And every creak above me still makes my stomach tighten. If you ever feel like you're being watched, don't brush it off, because I didn't, and it saved my life. In 2020, I moved into a tiny flat above a closed bookstore in Manchester. It wasn't the best place, but I liked the quiet. It had these long curtains that covered almost the entire front wall since the windows stretched across the room. I never opened them. I worked nights and mostly slept during the day. A few weeks after moving in, I started noticing small changes around the flat. My jacket would be on a different hook. The dish towel was damp when I hadn't used it. Nothing major, just little things. I blamed myself for being forgetful. Then one morning after my shift, I came home and the curtain was open just a crack. Enough to see a gap, like someone had been peeking out. I stood there staring at it for a long time. I remember my throat going dry. I hadn't touched those curtains in over a week. Then one morning after my shift, I came home and the curtain was open just a crack. Enough to see a gap, like someone had been peeking out. I stood there staring at it for a long time. I remember my throat going dry. I hadn't touched those curtains in over a week, but I couldn't shake the feeling. I got a cheap indoor security cam that connected to my phone. I set it to motion detect mode before leaving for work. 2 nights later, I got a ping on my phone around 2:40 a.m. I was at work and on a break. The app showed a short video clip, movement detected near the curtain. I opened it and nearly dropped my phone. A man was stepping out from behind the curtain. He stood there for a few seconds, then moved to the kitchen and opened my fridge, calm like he lived there. He poured himself some water and walked out of view. That was it. I called the police immediately. When I got home, they were already there. They didn't find anyone, but they did find signs that the curtain rod had been recently unscrewed at one end. There was enough space for someone to hide between the wall and the thick fabric. Found loose insulation and hair in the utility crawl space under the floorboards. He had been coming up through the old maintenance tunnel. My building didn't even know that part of the basement connected directly beneath my unit. They never caught him. But 2 weeks later, I got another ping from my camera, this time in the middle of the day. I was home. I watched the clip in real time. The curtains swayed. I ran out of the flat so fast I forgot to lock the door. I didn't stop running until I hit the corner shop. I called the police from there. Again, they searched. Again, they found nothing. But this time, they found a notebook hidden in the vent behind the heater. Pages filled with handwritten notes. She watches crime documentaries. I like that. She wore red today. Red suits her. I think I could make her like me.